Hello, I'm Lowell Taylor. I'm the first visually impaired racer in the amazing race history. Also an international motivational speaker with my wife, Julie. And we're going to be on Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, where we're going to talk to you about turning obstacles into opportunities, the importance of living with heart, and how to combat that inner bully inside your head. So stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Barron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Barron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us today on this episode of Dov Barron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty Leadership Interview Series, where today we'll look at what it really means to get out of your comfort zone and how teamwork and communication skills are the keys doing what others would consider impossible. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in, we're about to go full Monty. And if you're a regular, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. We're also honored and grateful to be cited by Inc. magazine as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader, and GNA cited us in the top 10 podcasts for HR and management pros. So thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. Remember, we always need your help in staying relevant, so get yourself over to iTunes. Please rate, review, and subscribe to the show. All right, let's dive right into this. Let's strip it down. Watching and listening to the show, you are either a high-level executive, an entrepreneur, a sales leader, or a leader in some capacity. And as such, we know that there's that constant push-pull between doing what's safe and predictable and getting out of your comfort zone and turning your business and your life into an actual adventure. But how do you get out of your own way? I mean, there's a lot of good reasons to stay comfortable and simply accept your lot in life, right? Well, our guest today might heavily disagree. Have you seen the show The Amazing Race? It's a reality TV game show in which teams of two people race around the world for a competition. It's amazing stuff. This is not that hysterical, screaming lunatic new, reality shows. The Amazing Race has actually earned 13 primetime Emmy Awards. Well, our guest today on this episode is Lowell Taylor. Lowell is the first visually impaired contestant on The Amazing Race in the history of the show, where he competed alongside of his wife, Julie. Lowell and Julie are an enthusiastic and dynamic couple who persevere through obstacles every single day. What do I mean by that? Lowell suffers from Retinitis Pigmentosa. I think I said that right too. And that means he's legally blind. He has no peripheral vision. And I know people like that drive around all the time, but he has no peripheral vision. He has reduced central vision and no vision in low light. Lowell has adjusted to decreasing sight his entire life and has found passion in sports. He's currently training for Para-Triathlon, Para-Cycling, both road and track events, and his dream is to compete in Tokyo in the Paralympic Games in 2020. His Paralympic dream is just one of the ways that his inspiring optimism, humor, and determination has turned tough times into positive experience. Lowell is also a registered psychologist working for Canada's first largest provincial-wide fully integrated health system. He was handpicked by management as an emerging leader very early in his career. Lowell and Julie's latest adventure has taken them into the world of motivational speaking, where from the stage they share their message of turning obstacles into opportunities. They prove that positivity can outshine disability and that negativity can be more debilitating than any disability. So please put your hands together and welcome Lowell Taylor. Woo!
Hey!
Take it out, my friend. The crowd's going wild.
I love that you have the clap track, and I have a lot of puns, so you might need a clap track, the laugh track to go along with that as well.
Maybe you've just got your own laugh track to go along with your puns. It's good to have you here, my friend. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Dov.
It's a real pleasure. So let's sort of backtrack a little bit, just so people have context. You weren't born blind. It's been growing, right? Tell us a bit about that. Was there a point in time when you had full vision?
Not that I can remember. So before I could even speak, my mom remembers me holding my hand out and reaching up to grab her. And so I couldn't see in the dark ever since I was young. And through my life, the visual field has continued to get smaller. So I had about 40 degrees, I think, growing up, and it's creeped down. And visually, legally blind is around 20 degrees. And now I'm at about 15 degrees. So I see through just a little hole through the very center.
Wow.
So there was a point where I could drive, but that's part of the story too, is going through life with perpetual loss, always having to give up something new, not being able to see the stars, not being able to play team sports, giving up your license. So always having to give up something new at each new stage as the degeneration continues to get worse.
Now that's an interesting thing, right? Because we think about blindness, and many people, I think most of us have seen that test or done that quiz, which is if you had to give up one of your senses, which one would you give up? And we live in a very visual world, more visual than it's ever been. It's very interesting because we think of blindness as a loss of a sense, but it's very interesting what you're saying, because it's not like you went blind from fully seeing to completely not seeing overnight. But you, as you said there, I think it's a very important piece. You are perpetually faced with loss. And it's one thing after the other. There's going to become a point, you have 2 young children, there'll come a point where you will never see their face again.
No.
Right? And and over time you're seeing less and less and less and less, right? That, I think, is a profound lesson in and of itself. We're in a culture where we're always trying to accumulate, we're always trying to get more of everything. Your lesson in life is the opposite. What a profound lesson for all of us to get used to letting go. The lessons with your vision is like turns you into a Buddhist master. It's all about letting go.
Yes, embracing the darkness, embracing the emptiness at times, and just being able to be with myself and being in the moment and being present, that I'm enough now, even without sight. And that's, some people talk about too, about what about a cure? Is there a cure? Currently, there's no cure, and they're working on it. But my happiness, my meaning, my purpose does not hinge on my vision coming back one day. That's not what I'm striving for, that I can be content and whole and happy now, every day, every moment, every time I'm with my children. Not that there's not grief and loss with that, but that I can be enough now, even with a disability.
But again, that's a profound lesson for all of us, because every one of us, every human being goes through an experience of feeling not enough. Of course, no matter whether you're fully sighted or not, you go through some experience of that. And this very interesting to me, that you're constantly having to look at how you are enough. Help us understand that. Help our viewers, our listeners grasp that piece of how do you come to terms with being enough? Because as a dad, for instance, the social conditioning, the parental conditioning is, I'm there to protect my children. I've got to be, to protect your kids. We think, well, you've got to be able to see what's coming at them. Walk us through a little bit of how do you deal with that? Being enough, being able to do it, and it's depleted. It's disappearing.
Yeah, and these are lessons that I'm learning and continue learning. So I may give a different answer to this in 10 years, but
I'm sure.
At this stage, I gain a lot of actually the answers and the inspiration from my grandfather. So this is a genetic eye condition, and he went completely blind at 40, but he continued to farm until his 80s.
What?
So he was very resilient, and he created machines to help build other machines, and he built these saws to build buildings, and he still planted fields with his tractors, and he all of his animals had bells on them. So he didn't let his blindness stop him.
Wow.
And so he had a growth mindset, this idea that you could continue to grow and adapt. And before the term was around, I'm sure he was resilient. He continued to just grow and to continue to take care of his wife and his family and to provide for his grandchildren. So I saw that growing up, his ingenuity and his determination, just pushing and the passion he had for life. But he was also an amazing man. At his funeral, one of the tributes was that he was a man who saw with his heart.
Huh.
And I really took that as being a core of what I wanted. I want people to see me for my heart. And I want to see others for their heart. So we actually went on the Amazing Race with that idea that we want to race with heart, not with sight. Right. And we've turned that into our theme of living with heart. But that's where it came from. It's, where are we going? Am I going through what I can see, or am I going through what I feel?
Wow.
And if I can still feel my children's presence, I can still feel their warmth, I can hear their voices, and I can feel that. And it impacts my work too as a psychologist. But you asked the question, and it's a great question. How do I continue to do that? Like, how do I live in the moment while I continue to have this loss? And I think it's, what am I holding? If I'm holding that I'm not going to be able to see all the details in the new blockbuster video, or if I'm not going to be able to drive my kids and go fishing, which are things that I would love to do. But what am I placing my meaning in? And if I'm placing it in the right things, connection, meaning, relationships, achieving great things for myself and for my family, but also helping other people achieve great things, helping people connect to themselves and to this world. So I really look at this idea for my meaning is, are we looking at connectedness to the moment? Are we here now? Are we present?
And that's a very, very, that's a very popular contemporary idea of being present. But, for somebody with the background that I have, that has been a focal point for me for more than 40 years. And I still don't think people understand it.
No.
Right? So, what you're talking about it is really grasping what that means to be present. Teach us that. Teach us how you're able to do that. Share with our viewers, our listeners, how that you're able to really grasp this idea of being fully present, and fully present in the face of loss, which I think is what people have to get. It's not just your eyesight is bleeding. It's in the face of loss, because that eyesight thing also impacts experiences. Help us understand that, Lowell, because that's a profound lesson.
Yeah, I'll use an analogy from the Amazing Race. So this season, one of the first tasks we had, it was a roadblock where nobody else can help you. So my wife couldn't help me in this task at all. Oh. And the task was to be hanging from monkey bars on the bottom of a gondola, hanging thousands and thousands of feet up in the air over Jasper, Alberta, Canada. And the idea was, in the fears that you're just, and I'm loving it, but hanging and trying to do monkey bars across the bottom. And in the moment I couldn't see the handlebars. And I needed to reach and feel, and I got almost to the end. I reached out, and the bar was further, and I dropped with one hand, hanging there with one arm, pulled up, grasped again to reach for that bar, and I miss it.
Whoa.
And I fall. And so that means I failed the roadblock. This means we could be going home. And in that moment, my heart sunk.
Sure.
A couple seconds later, not even a couple seconds, my mindset, my idea to turn obstacles into opportunities, to choose your response in the face of disappointment, in the face of loss, in the face of challenges, is to look at the opportunities. Here I am, bungee jumping in one of the most beautiful places on earth. I'm not paying for it, and I'm having an amazing time. So I let out this big smile and this wahoo, and this is my response to failing the task, but I'm fully present in that moment, enjoying a bungee jump. And that's one example. In the face of setbacks and losses, that what is to be gained, my vision. So I wouldn't have chosen to be blind, but I'm thankful for what it's taught us,
sure,
what it's taught myself, and what it continues to teach us, and what it can help me teach others. So it's given me opportunities to go on the Amazing Race. We're pretty boring without the blind story to go with, so it got us on the Amazing Race. It's opened up these doors to speak to people and share these stories. It's helped me get the chance to race around the world on bikes, right, to do the Paralympics. So I always reframe it to, what am I gaining? What am I learning? So don't look at the loss. look at what I'm gaining, look at the potential for growth, for deepening my character, my perseverance, my passion. So I could go on forever about this, as you can tell.
But I love all those things, but I still don't think that people, I don't want to poke anybody in the eye and maybe say, okay, now you have a closer sense of what it's like to be Lowell. But I don't know that people get these things. This is my point, Lowell. I don't think that I'm looking to see if we can find a way to have people to get this, because it's like one of those things. It's a concept and a theory until you're in it. I always say to people, one of my questions to the people I'm with privately is, do you think it's possible for you to commit murder? And, most people are like, oh no, I could never do that. Like, you know what? In the right situation, I believe human beings are capable of that. It's one of the things I learned from one of my teachers many years ago. It's possible for us to be the most magnanimous, gracious, kind, enlightened people. It's also possible for us to be a murderer. But it depends on the situation. But it seems like you've taken your, it's not, I don't even think like it's the right word to say disability, but your chronic loss of sight, and you've used it as this point of focus. Interestingly enough, a point of focus that allows you to constantly tweak and reframe, constantly tweaking, constantly reframing. And I just wish there was a way for me to sort of install that in people's heads, because I know we all hit the wall, we all have tough times, and I'm sure you do too. Your life isn't perfect, even with a great attitude. Things happen, and just trying to get people to grasp that tweak is so important when it can feel so like, oh, it's over, or I've lost everything. Because I think that one of the great challenges for people is the thing you started with, which is loss. For instance, identity. I'm a married man, and now my wife left me. I don't know who I am. And my children don't speak to me anymore. I was a father, I don't know who I am. I'm bankrupt. I was a CEO, and now I don't know who I am. I was an athlete, and now I've got injured and I can't compete. I don't know who I am. All these I don't know who I am is loss of identity. And it seems to me like, in listening to you understand this because we both have a background in psychology, but there's this constant willingness, maybe forced willingness, to give up the identity of who you were 5 minutes ago. Am I getting that right for you?
Yeah, you're delving in. This is going full Monty. I love it. I think so, because this is part of my story, right? Yeah. Being blind is part of my identity now, but that's always changing as well. And it's not to say I haven't gone through grief and loss. I've gone through periods of anxiety. When we found we were pregnant with our first child, I fell into this deep anxiety and almost a depression of, I'm going to be a blind father, right? And it hit me in this new wave of grief of that too. And I've gone through periods when I lost my license, when I had to change my career from a blind graphic artist. Not a great choice at the beginning, so had my quarter life crisis and switched over to psychology. But
hold on a minute. Let's not jump through that. Hold on a second. That is beautiful. So you can't remember ever fully having vision, and you chose graphic artist. Who was plying you with drugs, and where can I get some of those? Because they were obviously very good.
They're our own reality distortion fields.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that is wild.
The way that life works, I was building and building, and then it all came crashing down, and you build and build and build, and it crashes down. And so it's to continue to move through.
Yeah, for sure. So let's jump back into the Amazing Race, because that's something that is it was an American show. They made a Canadian version of it. You applied to be in the Canadian show. You were the first visually impaired person to ever be on that show, which is pretty amazing in and of itself. Let's just jump into the sort of meat of that for a minute. What was, as somebody who's visually impaired, what was the most challenging thing about that? I mean, was it even a thought going in?
Yeah, absolutely. Nobody's ever done it before. So we talk as well about the proper preparation principle, and this idea, go in the best you can, plan for success. And old Benjamin Franklin's quote, if you're not planning to succeed, you plan to fail, right. Or if you fail to plan. And you don't know how to plan. You don't know what to do. What are you going to be asked to do? And they don't give you a set of what you bring. They just say what you're not allowed to bring.
Oh, really?
And other than that, you have this wide open list. So what do you bring? You got to carry it all on your back. So we brought 5 pairs of glasses, multiple canes, different ends. Julie brought a dog leash. She kept me on a tight leash during the race. And so we did all these different adaptations to try to make our life through. But we had no idea what the biggest challenge was going to be. But preparing that the worst was probably going to be the roadblocks, those tasks that I was all alone by myself, and you can get zero help from your friend, zero help from my wife. And so when I'm on one of those tasks, if I can't see it, if I can't do it, we get a penalty and we may be eliminated. So that was the hardest part, we thought. What ended up being really challenging was the navigating. I was stuck in the back with the sound guy, and Julie was up front in the car with the cameraman. And in my limited sight, I couldn't read the map back there. I couldn't help her out. So she was driving, navigating, looking for the signposts, doing everything all by herself.
Wow.
And it was hard, very hard for me. It was a helpless feeling. And to have her have to do all of that by herself. She worked harder than anybody else in the entire season. This is a whole other topic we give in our talks about caregivers, the unsung heroes, right? I'm the one kind of getting the blind racer and this Olympic guy, but she's the support that helps me achieve these amazing things.
I think that's a really important piece for us all to get, because we talk, and I know, and we're going to go there with you in a moment, but, the whole thing around teams and understanding what that means. And so often, our viewers, our listeners, they're high-level individuals and they're very successful, and they're, we're at the front. When I stand on the stage and I speak and I work with companies and I do all those kinds of things, and I never ceases to amaze me how many people think it's me. I mean, of course I'm there and I'm doing it, but without everybody who's behind me, it's not possible. My wife is without doubt she's my business partner, but she is the force behind it all. And while I'm standing on the stage getting the applause, every time I'm in my mind taking it in for her and wanting to share that with her and tell her that you made the difference today. I got to impact that audience because of what you did. And I think that this is a really great team lesson for our viewers and our listeners from you. Because as you said, of course, let's applaud the blind guy who's racing. Of course, we should do that. But forgetting that the guy doesn't do the race without that support. Talk to us about how you guys manage that as a couple, that team piece, because there are things that you just can't do and that all fall on your wife, all fall on Julie as your partner. Tell us a little bit about how you guys manage that, because you both have, you got psychology, you've got, how do you do that?
Well, we talk a lot, we communicate a lot. And actually, what you don't see on the race, and for the people who watch it, you don't notice all of the small, subtle communication. We're not even fully conscious of a lot of it. A lot of it is hand gestures and other things up and over curbs. But we live our lives always communicating, touching, feeling, connecting, expressing. And so that's a nonstop. We're always checking in with each other.
Yeah.
And so there are times she has to take more weight, right? And that's part of the team. That's part of unity. That's part of us working as this broader. We're going to talk about teamwork.
Yeah.
But we have different skills. We have different gifts. And I provide a lot of the emotional stability in our relationship. And she would say that. I'm not throwing under the bus here. But we're very solid together as a couple. And we have our role set, but she does take more of the weight. Ooh. So we found that balance, but we were able to have a lot of fun. And one of the big pieces in the race, here's another analogy from the race. We're running through Vietnam. It's over 55 degrees with the humidity, no breaks. We haven't slept, haven't eaten, crossed the international time. We have no idea where we're going. We're running to the pit stop after being lost for 4 hours. And Julie says, go straight. So I'm running through a bunch of trees, and then she sees the pit stop, so she quickly turns before I can turn, and she says, no, right, and I run right into a tree. Boom.
Right.
And in that moment, we get to the finish line, and it's a great joke for a Monty Python joke. I say merely a flesh wound, and it's quite a lovely moment. But in that moment, I don't blame the team, right? I don't blame Julie. I don't go for, you told me left and we went right. We were doing the best we could. We were going full bore. And this is for leaders too. You're going full bore. You're doing the best you can with what you have, the information you have. You have to make a quick turn. Sometimes you make a mistake.
Right.
And you learn from that. And it's not to turn around and blame everybody else. What did we learn from that? And next time, what can we do? So Julie and I will never blame Julie. She felt bad,
Sure.
but I will never blame her for that. It wasn't her fault. We were doing the best we could, running faster than we needed to because it was a race. So
tell us about this, because now we've made the transition here, which I think is an important one, into the importance of team, recognizing team, but also communication. Because when we go into work with companies and organizations, it's one of the things we find all the time is, teams are getting better. There's no doubt about that than they used to be. There's still some siloing. We need to break down those silos. But at the same time, even today, we see that communication is a real challenge. We see that people don't really know how to communicate. And this is, again, something that you and Julie are forced into doing. You have to communicate, probably far more than the average couple anyway. But as team players, you have to communicate phenomenally. What is the lessons that the CEOs, the C-suite individuals can really learn from you about team and about communication?
So many.
I'm
so
sure.
Many.
I'm certain of that.
So the first one I think would be trust.
Mm-hmm.
And we throw around so many of these words. Like we hear it on your podcast, we read it in the books, and there are these words. But what does it look like in reality? But trust. What is it like to trust somebody completely? Running through, and it's black. When it's dark, I see nothing. I don't even have that pinhole. So it's completely black at night. We're running through, and I go running with Julie, and I see nothing. What is it like to put yourself in that harm's way and trust completely? Right? And that, do we do that with the people that we have in our organizations? Are we trusting them? Or are we always holding back and reserving? Are we letting them go? Are we letting them to run fast and with some safety nets around us, but enough that there might be some failure, there might be some running into that tree. But for Julie and I, it's trust. I trust her completely that she's going to do the best she can, and she's trusting that I'm going to give her as much as I can, and that I'm going to be honest with her. That if we're pushing too much, if I'm at the stage where it's going to cause her or myself harm, she trusts me as well that I'm going to let her know. So
there's a trust in the guidance, but there's also trust in the feedback loop.
Yes.
So oftentimes in organizations, we are made to trust the guider, the person at the lead, but there's often not trust in the feedback loop. What would you suggest because here's the CEO, the CFO, the CMO, the CIO, the C something, guiding the person who is underneath them. And so, the person underneath them is going, well, okay, I got to trust this person, they're my boss. How do you get that person to fully embrace being in the feedback loop and saying, listen to the boss, to the CFO, the CMO, whoever it is, listen, this is taking us to breaking point. How do you get them to communicate that? Because that is something that can feel quite threatening for many people in those quote lower positions to actually speak up. What would be your guidance for them?
Yeah, there's risk there, absolutely, and that goes to the culture. Is there a culture of safety?
Right.
And there is in our marriage, but is there a culture of safety? And then you can't have trust in that without safety. So that we bring that to a higher level as well. Right. So you have to have good communication. You have to have a safe environment to do that in.
Absolutely.
Unhealthy relationships, unhealthy teams don't have the safety. They're not going to have the communication, and they're going to fall apart. So I think there's a hierarchy here.
Absolutely.
But if you have that safety, to develop that safety in that organization, in your organizations, to say, you can speak up, right? You can share this. There's this freedom to do so. And the bottom line, right? If you are burning out good people, if you're pushing to the max, if they become disenfranchised, that hurts. That hurts the organization. So if you can get that feedback, if you can get them involved in where we're going and what's too much, what's not enough, and give some good leadership around that. That's a skill, and you need people like Dov and other people to help do that. But if you can have that feedback loop, the organization can be much safer, and you retain the good people.
Absolutely. It's one of the pieces in our 10-step model for building an authentic culture that is purpose-driven. And it's really interesting because one of those pieces is safety. And I think that so few people understand what that means, because it is actually communication and emotional safety, because so often that falls apart. And I'm so glad to hear you communicate that. What do you think is I mean, you know, it's your experience from of course from the Amazing Race, but it's also your experience in life. I would love to know what your guidance would be based on what you've learned from your experience to entrepreneurs, to people, because the word entrepreneur implies risk. So what if we, you know, we usually have a lot of entrepreneurs or high level entrepreneurs who watch our show, listen to our show. What would you say to them is the lesson they could learn most from yourself and Julie, not only as amazing racers, but as, you know, in what it is you teach?
Well, one of the lines, there's a lot of actually visual puns and things we could use. One of the statements that I use is that I don't have a lot of sight, but I have a lot of vision. And I think that is one of them, is if you have the right vision and you can call people to your vision, yes, as an entrepreneur, if you can get the right people around you, it's going to be great, right? So can you feel the vision? Is there passion and determination there? And then can you communicate that to others, and will they share that? Then you'll launch, right? If it's just your great idea and nobody else catches the vision, that makes it very challenging. So
in that context, what would be your guidance for having people do that, for having them catch the vision?
A lot of reflection, self-reflection, back to that moment, being in the moment, right? And reflecting, it's not just, it might be for some, it's never worked for me, the get rich quick thing and this idea. For me, it's living through it. And so that passion, what's going to help me get out of these slumps and helping other people and connecting to other people in relationships, has that been that for me? Mm-hmm. So that helps me get through the challenging times. And there's a deeper meaning and deeper resilience in that. So how do people do that? I don't know. I shouldn't say I don't know on a podcast.
No, it's okay. It's fine. I mean, nobody's expecting everybody to have all the answers. I think it's an important piece, because there's multiple things here, and it's the reason that I wanted to have you on the show. You and I had spoken before, and I was like, well, this doesn't fall into the usual category of leadership. But I think there's a lot of things around here, particularly in the context of leadership and entrepreneurship. I mean, first of all, you know, we've talked about, you know, vision versus sight. Definitely applies to both leadership and entrepreneurship. We talked about teamwork and the importance of that. Certainly works there. Communication, safety, all those things are important. But on top of all that, let's put things in context. And we'll even shift over to the entrepreneurial or the startup side of business. And that's this. Anybody who's ever been part of that world understands once you start into that world, it's kind of like juggling hats. You know, who am I today? I got to be this. Well, I got to be that. Then I got to be this. I got to be that. And really, this is how you guys live, because you're a psychologist. You know, you have a practice. You're a psychologist. Your wife is also. Tell us what Julie does.
She's a speech language pathologist, so speech therapist.
Speech therapist. That's a full-time job. You have 2 small children. You compete internationally in sports. You're a speaker. You know, and you've got this thing, some stuff in your eyes or something. I don't know what it is. You know, that's a lot of balls to juggle. And of course, you're trying to have a healthy, loving, fabulous relationship with your wife. Talk to us about balancing that, because I think balance is bullshit. I don't think anybody actually does balance. It's a fantasy that everybody has. But there's managing and focusing on things. Tell us how you guys sort that out, because there's so many balls in the air with what you're doing. A lot of people would go, listen, mate, I have a problem with, you know, I've got this issue with my sight, and, you know, we've got 2 kids. Forget it. forget it. I'm just going to stay home, read my Braille book, and that's it.
Yeah, for me, they're so connected. So it's fluid, and like you say, balance. If we just traditional balance, it might be flipping all over the place with this teeter-totter. But for me, it's this fluidity, and sport actually is where I find my flow. Right. So when I'm on the bike, I wake up at 4:30 or 5 every morning to go out on the bike before I go to work, and I get my hour to 3 hours of training in. That is where I find my grounding for the day, and it's where I clear my mind. It's where my ideas start to flow. It's where I get my energy from. So that's part of my coping. But it's also part of my launching me to the next level. Then there's work, right? That's paying the bills. I enjoy my work. It's very meaningful and rewarding. I worked really hard to get here. Right. And then there's family, and it's so important to me. So they're all kind of going and moving. And now that the speaking and the teaching is kind of is becoming a new thing as well. We have to find what goes, right? What do we change, and how do we move that? And that's this big piece too that we're finding ourselves in. As I've worked really hard to get to this point, we have the wonderful family, 2 kids, the golden retriever. We got that done. I've got the full-time job with a pension and all that. Got that done. All these things are going really well, but I'm like, is that it? Is this it? Like, have I arrived? And so it's now, what's next? Right. And I'm always the vision for the future. What's next? Right. And how can we spread this message bigger and further? We're just deciding to do it. We declare it, and then we do it, and we adjust along the way. So there's no magic here. I get feedback from her if I'm overdoing it. Hey, and the kids will let me know too now. They're starting to articulate that.
Like, Dad, we miss you.
Yeah.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, it's I think it's a great lesson for all of us, is that I think we've all experienced at some point in time overwhelm, and I think overwhelm is justifiable for anybody, because my levels of what I can cope with are not your levels, and they're not comparative. But it's that, you talked about the communication with you and Julie, and that she has to trust that you're going to give her that feedback. But one of the great lessons for us as human beings is to listen to our own feedback. It's like, before you go into the full-blown anxiety attack, it's like, you got a couple of warning signs along the way that might want to pay attention to, but we have this bullshit craziness inside of our head about, we just got to keep going. So we run this crazy hero mentality that destroys us and often brings things down. And I can see that is, that's going to be perceived inside of you very quickly, you as in Lowell, because of what it is you do, because of the obstacles you've overcome. It's quite fascinating about bringing people back to this center. And I love what you said, Lowell, and I think it's important for us to reiterate, is it's about, where do you put the meaning? What do you put the meaning on? Because I've said for years to people, there's no such thing as discipline. There's only what you call important. And if you say, well, I don't have the discipline for it, well, it's just not important enough. And that's fine. If you admit that to yourself, it'd make your life a lot easier, rather than saying, well, I should be, but rather than, no, hold it, here's what I do. This is what's important to me. How do you want, and if you want to know what's important to you, I'll help you out right now. It's whatever the shit you do all the time. That's what's important to you. If you're playing video games for 4 hours a day and you go, I'm not getting any work done on my book, well, it's not as important as the video games. And until it is, it's okay. So stop beating the crap out of yourself, and that's it, right? You've obviously made certain things important. You, and when I say you, I want to reiterate, you and Julie, as partners and as parents and as life partners and husband and wife. How do you guys do that? Is there a process for you guys in assessing those things? Because, like I said, full-time job, parents, and everything else, training for your sports, and then, how about doing the amazing race? How do you sort that out? Because that would seem like, that's a great adventure, but shit, another load?
Yeah, I think I might push a little bit further. I think Julie is good for me because she'll hold me back a little bit. My brain is always going, what's the next idea? What's the new thing? And how do we do this? So she's great at centering me as well and calling me back to kind of the priorities that we have agreed to as a family. But it's again, it's a dance, and that's there's not much more way. I think one of your previous podcasts was about that too, but the dance and learning to step on each other's toes and apologizing when we do, and we find sometimes we're actually really in sync and we're grooving and it's awesome, and other times it's not working, and then we know we have to reassess, we have to figure out what's going on. So I think that's another message for the leadership is sometimes your organizations are going to be in flow, they're going to be clicking, the dance is working, and other times it's just we're bumping into each other, stepping on toes, everything's falling apart, and then that's a good time to listen and say, hey, what do we got to readjust, what do we got to change?
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you this. This is a question I like to put forward to my guests. Like you, my background is in psychology, and one of the things I love looking at is patterns. I'm very fascinated with psychological patterns. And there are certain psychological patterns that I've observed in people who are highly successful. And one of the things I've noticed about highly successful people, whether it's in sports or whether it's in business or in any area of life, is we're all a bit nuts. What I mean by that is we all have a bit of an obsession. There's something we're obsessed with. And when I want to refine what I'm saying here so people understand it, I'm not talking about OCD. I'm talking about there's an obsession. When I say that is if there's a movie that comes on and that subject that you're obsessed with comes up, it's the part of the movie you remember. If there's a TV series about it, you got to watch it. If there's a book about it, you got to buy that book. You got to read that book. If a conversation comes up about it, whatever it is, you find yourself drawn into that conversation, even actually if it's a socially inappropriate conversation at where you are at that moment. So, Lowell, you're clearly a very driven individual, and you guys have done amazing things. What are you obsessed with?
Relationships. I think relationships is how I get through every day. It's how I do amazing things. I have coaches and mentors, and I mentor others, and I have training partners. So I race internationally, triathlon and cycling. So I need guides. They do it all with me. So even my sport is connected in relationship. The better we do as a relationship on the team, on the bike and the swimming and the running, the better the team does, the better I do. So relationships, and every time it comes up, right, Brene Brown and vulnerability and shame and everything to do with, it's just relationships and connection. That's my passion and that's my focus. And it's seeing other people for their heart. And it's morphing, right? And it's morphing in a way that I hadn't really noticed before. Right. This idea that I've gone through this time of not feeling like I belonged, right? Ever since a child, I was the blind kid. I was overweight. I was run over as a child, so I couldn't control my bowels when I was young. So I was also the stinky kid. I was lonely. I had no friends. And so I had this really big struggle going through. I always felt like the other. I didn't belong. I wasn't there. And the bully got into my head.
Right.
So the bully from others is there, and it happens for many people. But I adopted the bully inside, and so I started to bully myself with those words. I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. I don't belong. I can't do this. And those messages stayed with me. Absolutely. And I can even I can be aware of the bully now coming out sometimes too inside, and I have to control the bully. But the interesting piece is I have a relationship even with that bully. And I've needed that bully to push me. I needed to overcome that bully as well. And so it's one of our phrases, it's not bully others, not bully yourself. And that's relational. So it's relational to yourself, relational to others. So the topic of relationships, that's my passion right now.
Fantastic. I want to stay on that for a moment, which is talk to us, because I see that in people who fail miserably, and I see it in people who succeed phenomenally. That bully, the inner bully. Talk to us about managing the inner bully.
Yeah. So this is a process, and I think the more resources we have, the better we're able to handle the bully.
Sure.
So the more we're connected to other supports that are giving us positive messaging of ourselves and where our value and worth comes, the more we're centered in ourselves, connected to breath in the moment, and to others and to nature, But it's to be aware, right? To use the third eye or the awareness of self or that meta thinking. Why am I asking this? Be intrigued. Ask the question. Why am I thinking this way? And it's usually out of my own insecurities, my own disappointments. And if I be aware of that, I can notice that voice, just because I think a thought doesn't make it true.
Stop. I want everybody to grasp that, because I think that this is the largest mistake we make. You know, some people, it actually comes out of their mouth, but they believe the thought in their head as a truth. So please say that again. I want everybody to tattoo this on their brain.
Yeah, so just because you think a thought doesn't make it true. And if you can parse that out, and there's techniques, and sometimes you need a therapist to help you do that, or there's a safe friend or family member or somebody else or somebody who can help you see that. What is the truth? And if you can see where you get your value from, where your worth is from, that you don't have to listen to those gerbils in the head, that bully inside, and you can get beyond that. And you can use that, right? That voice, you could turn it into this thing. Okay, you don't think I can do that? Let's go, right? We can do the Amazing Race. We'll show you.
Yeah.
You can use it as a motivator. Switch it. Turn that into an opportunity.
A lot of people are driven by that voice. But I'll tell you something about it. And again, I'm sure you know this better than most people will because of psychology. But here's the thing. Even if you use the bully to drive you, you'll never be satisfied when you get there. This is the problem with it. So you might go, well, screw you, bully. I'm going to do it anyway. But when you get there, that bully has not gone away. You can't kill the bully. And I think that what Lowell said is very important for you to recognize. You cannot kill the bully, but you can manage the bully by having a relationship with it, by doing exactly what Lowell just gave you, which is get curious. Get curious about the bully. So tell me, bully, what? And I actually like to use that term. Tell me, bully, why do you say that? Where does that come from? Well, you're just a piece of shit. There's nothing about you. You've always failed. Yeah, tell me, bully, why do you say that? Well, it's true. Look at how you failed with this and this and this. Well, it's interesting, bully. How come you don't remember where I succeeded? How come you don't remember where I overcame the obstacles? How come you don't remember this? And you become to, and again, not making it wrong, you question, you get curious. Because that bully is there and the volume can be turned down. You can't kill it. You can't destroy it. You can't remove it. The Dalai Lama talks about this similar thing. You can't get rid of this. Stop trying to kill the beast. Instead, pet the beast, recognize the beast, validate the beast, recognize that it's there for a good reason that was pertained to you in history, but may have nothing to do with you in the present. And I think that this piece is vital, what you shared with us, Lowell. Like to get to recognize that there's a bully in your head, but get curious about it. Thank you so much for that. That's a valuable piece for all of us to listen to.
I think the follow-up to that would be in getting to know that relationship. It's almost empathy for the inner bully and see where is that coming from. And so for me, I see the bully coming out of defense for feeling like I don't belong. So as a child, I didn't belong, I didn't fit. Now I see my weakness, my vision. I see that as beauty. I see that as a part of myself, a gift that I have in this world that others don't have, a part of my story. And so what I was reacting to as the bully, the internal bully, is now something that I'm giving as a gift. I see as beauty in the weakness. I'm actually offering strength out of that. So it's turned the paradigm and it's molded me, it's shaped me, it's who I am, it's our story.
It's fantastic. Wonderful. Listen, everybody faces challenges, and certainly you've been at no shortage of that. On those days, and I think it's probably true for everybody, but certainly you're definitely confronted with it. On those days, it's never all sunshine and roses, and there are days where you wake up and it feels like, it's very dark and very cloudy, and it'd be easy to pull the blankets over your head and just not get out of bed because it just feels too much. What is it that gets you out of bed on those kinds of days, Lowell? What is it that brings you back?
Back to connection. So the four areas that I say is, am I connected to the moment, to the breath? Am I connected to myself? Am I connected to others, to my wife, to my children, to the people around me? And if I feel a disconnect in that, I need to address it. Am I connected to the bigger picture, to nature? am I connected to the community, to other people around me, bigger than just the other, like to nature and then a higher power and higher meaning. If I don't feel those connections, something is missing.
Right.
And that I need to go back and say, what have I dropped? Have I been too busy pursuing ego or too busy pursuing whatever obligations, responsibilities? And have I lost touch with the things that are fulfilling me? So have I stopped exercising because I got too busy? Have I stopped sitting and just playing and being present with my children? And then I can be aware and say, actually, I got to get back to some of those things that kind of fill me up again.
Fabulous. So my last question to you is this. Has to be short. What do you want on your gravestone?
This was a man who saw with his heart.
So, great lesson from your grandfather.
Great lesson from my grandfather, yeah.
This is a man who saw with his heart. Phenomenal. Lowell, it's been phenomenal having you on here. Thank you so much for everything you shared. It's been a real gift, and I really want to thank you for that. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you, about potentially bringing in you and Julie in to speak, or reaching out to you in any way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm, thanks. We're going through this change right now as it happens. Right, the race was last summer, and so these doors have been opening to do public speaking, and more requests are coming in, and it has been amazing. So we've launched livewithheart.ca, and that's a page that's kind of in progress. So we're starting there. You can reach us there. We're also at all of the social media, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter on @JulieLowellCan, CAN. So @JulieLowellCan, you can reach us there. And yeah, Julie is this amazing, wonderful burst of energy. So when we're lucky, we get to present together and feel the applause together as well. So we do that on stage, and we have this wonderful dynamic. So we're blessed to be able to do that. She's not here today for the talk, but she's within me in spirit today. But normally we're up on stage together.
So you can find them at livewithheart.ca, and again, we'll post all these URLs for you. You can find them on Twitter. Again, please give us that Twitter handle, if you would, please, Lowell.
@JulieLowellCan.
So Lowell, Lowell, okay, and then CAN, as in short for Canada?
Yeah, short for Canada. And also that we can. It's our can-do attitude.
Fabulous, fabulous, fabulous. I really want to thank you again for joining us. It's been really great having you here on the show. I really hope that everybody doesn't just listen, as I always say. Don't just listen, please. Take what you've learned, put it into action. It will change the way you are, how you think, what it is you're doing. This has been a fabulous show, and I hope you've really enjoyed it. I'm deeply grateful to Lowell for joining us here today. So again, thank you, Lowell. I'm deeply grateful. And to you, dear listener, thank you for joining us today. Remember, the research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing even the most successful companies can be somewhat counterintuitive. And that is that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing talent. But they're also having that talent leave them at an alarmingly fast rate. If you're sick of investing in training and developing your talent, only to have them leave you in a year or two before you've even had a chance to have that return on investment, then reach out to us at fullmontyleadership.com. Where we provide the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets within your organization. And as a result, we can reduce your employee turnover rates by as much as 20 to 80% in as little as 90 to 120 days, thus evaporating the horrendous costs that you are wasting on training and development. Again, reach out to us at fullmontyleadership.com, because we're providing the concrete soft skills that get your organization to the top and keep you there, because you can't outsource authenticity. And remember, you can get your self-evaluation, self-leadership assessment tool at matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, which will walk you through the five areas that it takes to be an authentic leader that generates the kind of loyalty that you need. Simply go to matrix, MATRIX, fullmontyleadership.com. Till next time, this is Dov Baron, fullmontyleadership.com, saying stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the limitations you've put inside of yourself and how to overcome them, because you can can make friends with the bully. Till next time, Dov Baron, and I am out.